Let's talk to Jay Jaffe now. Here is his ballot. Jay, of course, has the objective methodology, the JAWS method of measuring excellence that's operating off of WAR. Here's his ballot. He goes Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Mark Burley, Cole Hamels, first year. First year vote for Cole Hamels. King Felix, Andrew Jones, Andy Pettitte, and Chase Utley. No Jimmy Rollins there. All right, that's what stands out to me as we jump off the top. Jay Jaffe joins us now. Jay, I want to just jump right into it. We have a slight delay here, so I'll just jump in. Hello, great to have you. Bobby Abreu. Sell us on Bobby Abreu. Why?
Bobby Abreu was an outstanding hitter. Routinely hit 300 with a 400 on base percentage and a 500 slugging percentage. Routinely got 20 home runs and 20 steals. Really could do it all. Was not a great fielder, maybe a little bit scared of outfield walls, but he was everything you could ask for in a hitter. Not a big slugger, just a great on-base guy.
You know, he was, absolutely. I used to make my case for him because he'd be coming in with a 420 on base, right? And a 520 slugging, and he'd be stealing bases at a good clip. Yet I found him a little wanting as compared to other great right fielders. How much do you take that into consideration, that there is always a strong crop of hitting right fielders that are available?
Yeah, it's the deepest pool that we have among Hall of Famers. And it's a little bit skewed when you look at JAWS because you've got Babe Ruth and Stan Musial and Frank Robinson in that pool, all guys with 100+ WAR, some of the all-time inner circle greats. Now, Bobby Abreu is roughly, I think, 20th in JAWS. He's down there around where Gary Sheffield and Vladimir Guerrero are. I voted for Sheffield. Obviously, Vladimir Guerrero had no trouble getting into the Hall of Fame. I see Bobby Abreu as pretty much equivalent there. Not the same charisma, not the same star power, but the same level of production, and that's good enough for me.
All right, yeah, I mean, this is my mantra on this show all afternoon is somebody should make a case for, and whether that's Mark Burley or Bobby Abreu, somebody should making the case for Bobby Abreu, and you do. Cole Hamels, year one. Tell me about Cole Hamels. What put him over the top for you?
Yeah, when I started looking at the end of every cycle, I start looking ahead the next 5 years, what the Hall of Fame ballots are going to look like. And Cole Hamels really stood out to me as the best pitcher that we're going to see between the election of CC Sabathia and the arrival of the Zach Greinke, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander group. Obvious Hall of Famers. Most of the pitchers that we're going to see are going to come up short relative to Cole Hamels, to say nothing of those other guys. I see Hamels as a guy who really stands out to me as, he was maybe underappreciated in his day. But look, the guy won an NLCS MVP and World Series MVP in the same year. He was a quality pitcher who never really had a bad season. He just got hurt and basically couldn't make it back to the mound long enough to get the big counting stats.
Yeah, I agree with you, by the way. I'm going to have a whole essay on that. I'm in on Cole Hamels. You also go Mark Burley. So Burley is another one that, I don't know, should we compare him already to the pitchers now? Because 200 innings a season for 15 years, we'll never see that again. How should we judge him?
Yeah, he's an anachronism because of his durability. And honestly, I started with the premise that I was going to look at all these starting pitchers because of the way we need to reevaluate them. And we get Cole Hamels and Felix Hernandez have similar career stats. Andy Pettitte has a different shape to his career with that big postseason resume. Mark Burley just kind of fits in there in between them in terms of he's got a higher peak than Pettitte by my best 7 years. He helped win a championship, so he's got more of a postseason presence than Felix Hernandez. He did place fifth in a Cy Young voting. Probably should have been maybe considered a little bit higher there. I couldn't once I came around on the other three starting pitchers on this ballot. I really couldn't say no to Burley, especially because I had the room, having only voted for 7 other candidates.
I like it. I like it a lot. Again, when you go year by year, he starts to, rise in your estimation. I wouldn't have thought that Andy Pettitte would do great in your system. I know you have your JAWS system because you do have to add a bunch of ancillary things. Why do you vote for Andy Pettitte?
I think a lot of it has to do with the postseason stuff. I mean, Andy Pettitte was a member of five World Series winners, 6 pennant winners, 4 World Series winners, 6 pennant winners. He was a go-to guy in those series. I mean, I think of the 2003 and 2009 especially. when he was just absolutely nails in the postseason. You have to consider that beyond what he did. I mean, he pitched something like 276 innings in the postseason with roughly the same ERA against higher caliber competition, holds just about every major record, strikeouts, innings, wins. You know, I had him on my ballot a couple of years ago as the 10th guy. I dropped him last year to make sure Felix Hernandez got his 5% to stay on. This year, I had room for them both. Also, and look, I'll admit, you know, Andy Pettitte, I was a fan of Andy Pettitte long before I started writing about baseball professionally. So, you know, it would make me happy to see Andy Pettitte in the Hall of Fame.
Wow, wow, Jay Jaffe expressing some personal bias and happiness. I'm stunned. Can you hear that? Jason Stark is
personal happiness.
What is happening? Personal happiness. What does that have to do with anything, Jay? Forget it. No, you're right. Of course, like what's your feeling? And a lot of times your feeling is based on things that you are seeing and then things that were actually there. What's fascinating to me is like in this day and age that it's gotten more complicated, even with the methodology, right? So you tell me, like, where do you begin and end with your, like, I have an objective methodology, I'm going to stick to this. At what point do you say to yourself, I need to go beyond the metrics here?
Yeah, well, when you look at the Jaws, the career peak and WAR numbers of the guys on the ballot, most of them are below the standard at their position. There's only two who meet the standards, and they're the PED guys, Manny and A-Rod. Chase Utley barely inched above the mark, and that was only after Jeff Kent was elected because Kent knocked it down a few decimal points there. Utley and Andrew Jones are above the 7-year peak standard at their position. I start with those, and I think those are my starting point. I've got Utley, Beltran, and Andrew Jones all among the top dozen at their position. That, to me, that's no-brainers because the Jaws standard at each position varies a bit. They're skewed. These are smaller samples we're dealing with, so those are the obvious guys. And the starting pitchers, they're a separate group that I'm thinking about. And like I said, Bobby Abreu, I made the case that he's equivalent to a lot of the guys we've got in the Hall of Fame already, including the much respected Vladimir Guerrero. But so I'm inching downward a little bit. But if you get to 50 Jaws or 40 Jaws for a catcher, to me, that's where we really start having a conversation about these position players. And I can make a stronger case for them. That there are other things we're maybe missing here that help make up the ground.
Right, and I think you have something that could also be an objective criteria, because people will ask me, you mean to say if he's one of the top 10 in his position at all time, he's a Hall of Famer? And I say, yes, that's what I mean. If you're one of the top 10, we're playing 120-something years of baseball already. If you're in the top 10 in your position, yes, that's a Hall of Famer. Jay, we're out of time, but thank you. Thank you for expressing your own personal bias that you threw in there. We like to see you break out of the mold a little bit, and we love your expertise. Jay, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, BK.